we can go about customizing our WordPress blog even further by making use of something called widgets. Now, what the heck is a widget? Well, a widget is very similar to a WordPress plugin, and by the way, we'll be getting to WordPress plugins in the next chapter, so hang in for that one. They're very similar to WordPress plugins, however, they're designed to control content inside your blog's sidebar. And you can use widgets to further personalize your blog if you like. You can get them to do all kinds of different things. You can add in feeds from perhaps from your social media. For example, you could add in a Twitter feed if you like, or you could add in a photo stream from Flickr, this sort of thing, right? You can do all kinds of neat, amazing things. What's really cool about widgets is you don't need to know any HTML or CSS to actually make use of them. That said, if you do know your HTML and your CSS, you can take widgets even further and you can customize them exactly the way you want them to appear and behave on your blog. Okay, so I'm looking at my live blog right now, and of course I still have that custom theme that you and I just applied to our blog. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and on my sidebar, if you're using the same theme that I'm using, then of course the sidebar is here on the left-hand side. On the sidebar, we can see some different headings here. We have pages, and we have archives, categories, and so on. There's our blog roll and our links with our friends and links there, and of course meta down at the bottom. Now, each of these items that sits inside the sidebar would be considered a widget. For example, we have pages. So this entire pages block, if you will, imagine that that's its own separate widget that sits inside the sidebar. And then the same would hold true for archives as well, that entire archives block, this entire categories block, and so on. All of these items that we see here are all individual widgets. That's how it works, right? And of course, at the very top here, you can see that we have a search widget as well. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to head back to my admin interface, my admin console there. Keep your live tab open though, because we want to go back and forth quite a bit here to see what happens when we start customizing our widgets. So head back to your dashboard there, your admin console, and I want to go and access the area that's going to allow me to start messing around with widgets. So that's found underneath the Appearance menu. So go ahead and pop open Appearance and then look for Widgets. Go ahead and pop that fellow open. Now, way back at the beginning of our course, we saw this screen, and I gave you a very brief tour of this screen. Essentially, what we have here is a box or a module that contains all of our available widgets. Drag widgets from here to a sidebar on the right to activate them. Drag widgets back here to deactivate them and delete their settings. So, in other words, what I see here inside this available widgets module is all of the default widgets that we have available to us here in WordPress. And there's all kinds of them here. Archives and calendar and categories and all the rest of it. And what we'll do in just a moment is we'll take these guys and we'll move them over into our sidebar. Now, our theme only has one sidebar, but many times you'll come upon themes that have multiple sidebars, maybe two sidebars. You can actually drag your widgets to the different sidebars that your theme supports. And then all the way down at the bottom, if I keep scrolling down, we have inactive widgets. Drag widgets here to remove them from your sidebar, but keep their settings. So we'll talk about that in just a little while. Now, there's a couple of specific widgets that I want to point out here to kind of draw your attention to. First of all, if I scroll down a little bit here, we have calendar, a calendar of your blog's posts. Oftentimes you'll see a calendar sitting on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side of a blog, and if you've ever wondered how they actually got a calendar onto their website, this is probably how they did it, right? Categories, a list or drop-down of the categories that you and I have created for our blogs. Links, your blog roll. Recent comments, the most recent comments on your blog, I like that one, and recent posts, the most recent posts on your blog as well. Lots of others in here, but I wanted to point out a few of them there anyway. All right, are you ready to start working with widgets and customizing that sidebar? Well, let's take a look at how that works. All right, let's get started customizing our sidebar. Are you still inside your widget screen? I hope so. If not, just navigate back down to Appearance and then into Widgets. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and keep this fairly simple and straightforward at first, and then we'll get a little bit more complicated as we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the calendar widget. That seems to be a pretty popular widget, so all I'm going to do, and this might seem kind of strange at first, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this title bar here, this calendar title bar, and I'll click and drag him over onto the sidebar over on the right-hand side of the screen, just like that, and then just let go of your mouse. That's it. That's all there is to it. Okay, now here's our widget sitting over inside the sidebar. It's asking us for a title, so I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a title. I'll call this Upcoming Events. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and save this guy. There it is. All right, the moment of truth. Do you still have your preview tab open there inside your browser? I hope so. Flip over there, and all I want you to do now is simply refresh. Command R or Control R. And sure enough, there's the upcoming events calendar sitting over inside the sidebar inside our theme. How's that? Pretty cool. Now, you know what's really interesting to note here? Well, first of all, getting a widget into your sidebar is super easy. Not a whole lot to it. Pretty straightforward. But the other thing that I want to mention is take a look at your sidebar now. Scroll down a little bit more, and you'll notice that your entire sidebar has been completely wiped out. And it's been replaced with this upcoming events, this calendar page that you and I just added in here, this calendar widget, I should say. So that's sort of the default behavior anyway. When you go and drag a widget into that sidebar, it wipes out the default sidebar and you essentially have to start all over again. But the plus side is you get to completely customize the sidebar. So that said, let's take a look at customizing this sidebar further. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll head back to the admin console, back over to my admin tab there. Of course, I'm still inside widgets, and now I decide that I want to add more widgets to my sidebar. And of course, we can add in as many widgets as we want, as few or as many as we want. I'm going to start off with archives. I'm going to go and grab archives from the left and simply click and drag this guy over into the sidebar. Now, what's kind of tricky though, and this is a little odd, is that notice it's not adding the archives, which is a little weird. Sometimes you have to move your mouse around a little bit until he'll actually add in. Sometimes what I do there, I just did it there, is I move the archives above calendar and then I'll drag them below and then it seems to work. Just kind of an odd thing there, but anyway. Okay, there's archives. It's prompting us for a title here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll type in my blog's archives, something like this. And then below that, we have some additional settings. So what you'll find is that the widgets that you add into your sidebar, each one's unique and each one has its own set of customization options. Show post counts or display as a drop-down menu. Well, you can try the drop-down menu there if you want. I'm going to go with show post counts and I'll go ahead and click on save. Okay, good stuff. Let's go and add in a few more. I'm going to add in my categories as well. So I'll go and look for categories there on the left-hand side. Grab this guy, drag him over into the sidebar. Again, I'm not getting that dotted frame, that dotted rectangle that I should be getting. But if I move this guy above, yep, there he is there. Very odd, very weird. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit. Categories. You can type in a title if you want. You don't have to type in a title, but I usually do. My blog's categories. Show as a drop-down. Show post counts. I'm going to go show post counts, and I'll go ahead and save that guy. And let's do one more. I mean, we've got a lot to pick from here on the left-hand side, but let's do one more here together. I'm going to do meta, so the login, logout, the admin, feed, and the WordPress links. Go ahead and grab that guy. I'm getting smart now. I'm just going to drag this guy into the sidebar there, and then I'll drag him below. See if I can get him to fit in there. There he is. All right. And then, you know, I'm not going to bother with a title for this guy. Okay, we're looking good there. Now, what's interesting here is there's no update option. We don't have to update anything. We can just kind of let her rip here. So I'll head back over to my live blog tab inside my browser here and refresh Command R. And here we go. There's our calendar inside the sidebar. There's the blog archives, my blog archives, with the count, the post count in brackets. My blog's categories, with the brackets there again, and then down at the bottom, the meta information showing up there, the site admin, the logout, and so on. So what's cool here is the order of the widgets here inside the sidebar is being determined by the order of the widgets here back in the admin console. That's how it works. As you've seen so far, there's a lot that you can do to go about customizing our blog's sidebar, our themes sidebar here. And I want to show you a couple of neat things that we can do to further customize things. We want to take the idea of customizing this sidebar and go even further with it here. So what I'm going to do is, once again, keep your preview tab open inside your browser, and then head on over to your admin console there. And once again, I hope you're still inside your widgets screen. If not, head down to appearance and then into widgets. What I want to do here is let me show you a couple of neat things here first before I get too far ahead of myself. What I can do here inside this sidebar, you can see that my sidebar is starting to look pretty cluttered in terms of all of the widgets that I've added in here. So you may have noticed this, but on the title bar for each of our widgets over on the right-hand side, there's a little drop-down arrow. So if I click on that drop-down arrow, it'll actually collapse down that particular widget, which is extremely cool, and it looks a lot more tidy and a lot more organized. So this little drop-down arrow here will simply expand and collapse the individual widgets that we have sitting on our sidebar. So usually what I do after I drag a widget onto my sidebar is I throw in any customization options that I want, and then I collapse it down. So on the blogs that I run, my sidebars actually look like this. So it's a heck of a lot more tidy and a heck of a lot more organized. Okay, great. A few other things that I want to show you here. What if I decide that I don't want to have a widget on my sidebar anymore? Well, that's super easy. We already read about how to get rid of that when we first came into our widget screen. All I'm going to do is take my widget here. I'm going to use my calendar for this example, and I'm going to take the calendar and simply drag him right off the sidebar and drop him over into this available widgets module, just like that. That's all there is to it, right? And then again, there's no update button to click or save changes button or anything like this. It's a done deal, so be careful with this. I'm going to head back to my live blog now, flip over there, and refresh. And then sure enough, now the calendar is gone, and now the first module, the first widget that sits over inside my sidebar is now the blog archive, right? So there's one way to get rid of your widgets from your sidebar. I'm just going to flip back over to my admin area. There's another way that you can get rid of these widgets from your sidebars. You can always expand your widgets, again, just by using that arrow on the right-hand side. And you have a delete option there as well. Basically does the same thing, so it's really entirely up to you. Now don't forget, if you take one of your widgets and you drag them off of the sidebar and then over into this available widgets module, not only are you getting rid of the widget, but you're also deleting all of your customization, right? So for example, the archives here, I gave this guy a unique title, and I also said that I wanted to show the post counts there as well, right? So if I take this guy and I drag him off into this available widgets box, I lose that customization, right? I'm just going to drag him back here. But maybe I want to remove this guy from the sidebar, but I want to keep his settings, his customization. So what I'll do instead is I'll drag him off of the sidebar, and I'll see if this is going to work for me here. I'm going to try and drag him all the way down into this inactive widgets module way down at the bottom of my screen. It was a little bit tricky to pull that off, but that's the idea there anyway. So that is a way to maintain those custom settings that you've set up for your widgets. Okay, hopefully all good. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention as well is as you're adding on widgets into your sidebar, as you're getting more and more widgets sort of crowding this right-hand side, you can always change the order of the widgets inside your sidebar. So for example, right now I have categories, and then I have my meta widget. So then if I go back to my live blog for just a moment and I refresh Command-R or Control-R, there we are. This is how things are looking. So I have my blog's categories. There's all the categories that we have. And then the metadata, right? Well, maybe for whatever reason, maybe I want the metadata to be first, and I want the blog categories to appear below that, right? So here's what I'm going to do. back over on my admin tab here. All I'm going to do is take one of the categories and simply move it, change the order of it inside the sidebar. So here I just dragged categories below meta. So you can always rearrange the order of your modules here on the sidebar. It's really, really easy, very, very flexible. So hopefully all good. You can mess with that if you like. Now, the last thing that I want to do here, I think, before we close out of this exercise, is I want to add on some more widgets. I want to add more widgets into my sidebar. So let's see here. I'm going to head over to the left-hand side here into this available widgets area here. And the first guy that I want to add on is my search. So I want to add a search form to my blog. The reason why I want to add in a search form, by the way, is you got to remember, because you're going to be regularly adding new posts to your blog, once old posts move off of the front page of your blog, they're in that blog loop, right? Well, they're going to get lost sort of in the ether of your blog, right? So it's always nice to provide various methods to allow your visitors to find those older posts, and adding in a search field is one such method here. So I'm going to grab this guy and I'll drag him up to the sidebar here on the right hand side. I'm going to drop my search right up at the very top of the sidebar. That's what I'm after there. And I'm not going to bother with a title or anything. You can add in a title if you wish. Now, on the issue of keeping posts active inside your blog, there's another module, another widget that I want to add in here, which is recent posts, the most recent posts on your blog. I'm going to go and add this guy in. So I'll grab him and I'll drag him up and I'll drop him into my sidebar just below search. And once again, you can throw in a title. And here we have the number of posts to show. Maybe I'll show the last 3 posts, for example. And then I'll click on save and collapse this guy down. Okay, 2 more I want to do here with you. Let's grab links, our blog role, drop that guy in there. And we want to show all links. We want to show link image, and we want the link name in there as well. So you can save that and then collapse that guy down. Okay, 1 more. I want to go and grab my recent comments. I'll grab that widget and drag him onto the sidebar there as well over on the right. Comments to show, I'll leave the default there, 5. Okay, so there it is. Now I'm just going to do a little reorganization here. I'll drag meta down to the bottom, if it's going to play nice with me. There we are. So as you can see, again, really, really flexible here. Flip back over to the live blog, Command R or Control R to refresh. Let's see what we have here. There's our search. There's our recent posts. We have 3 recent posts. Below that, our blog role, which includes the friends and links list that you and I created. The categories. A little bit further down, we have recent comments, and then finally the meta. So far, you've seen how to work with a set of default widgets that we can add to our blog's sidebar. And as cool as they are, one other option that we have available to us is the ability to create custom widgets, which is extremely cool stuff. Now, this is where an understanding and a working knowledge of HTML and CSS really comes into play here, but I'll try and keep this nice and easy for us here. So what I want to do here with you is I want to go and create a custom widget that's going to involve a graphic. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to head over to the admin tab. I'm still inside my widgets screen inside the admin console. And there's a widget that's available to us here which allows us to work with either text or custom HTML and CSS. I'm just going to scroll down here and look for this guy. There he is right there. Text is the name there. Arbitrary text or HTML. So that's the guy that we're after. On one of the blogs that I run, I think I make use of about 4 or 5 of these guys inside the sidebar. Just kind of a nice, easy way to pull off some customization, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll take this guy and I'll drag him over onto the sidebar on the right. Of course, I've got to drag this guy upwards as well. And I want to drop this guy right below the search field, right below the search widget there. And as soon as I drop the text widget onto the sidebar, he expands out, and he's kind of super huge here. And it wants a title, and then it also gives us this wide open text field, and inside this field we can type in whatever we want, right? So here's what I'm going to do. The title that I'm going to add in here is going to be another cartoon. There we are, something like that. Okay, And then inside this sort of main body area, as I say, you can type in whatever you want. You could hand code in some HTML if you want, perhaps an unordered list or an ordered list or something like this. You know, we saw a lot of this earlier, right? So you can certainly do that. Or oftentimes what I wind up doing is I create something in Dreamweaver. I create my widget code inside Dreamweaver, and of course Dreamweaver is writing all the code for me, and then I take that block of code and I copy it and then I paste it into this field here, right? Now, what I've done for us is I've already created the HTML code that you and I need to pull off this custom widget. So no worries if you don't have a working knowledge, a familiarity with HTML and with CSS. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hide my browser, and I'm going to go all the way down to my desktop, into my project files folder. And inside the project files, you'll find a text file called widget.txt. Go ahead and pop open that guy. And this guy contains all of the code, well, not only the code, but also the content that we want for that widget. So what I'd like you to do is select all this code and copy it. Okay, perfect. You can close out of the file and close your folder window there. And I'll just flip back over to Firefox. And then inside this main field here, I'm simply going to paste Command V or Control V. Perfect. Okay, let's see how this guy looks. I'm going to go ahead and click on Save so that my changes are saved there. And I'll go ahead and collapse my text module there, my text widget, so everything's nice and organized there. And let's go and see how this guy works. I'm going to flip back over to the live blog, the live tab there, and then go ahead and refresh your browser, Command R or Control R, and you should wind up with something like this. So there's another cartoon, and then our graphic, and then below that, Jeff just can't help but draw cartoons. That's the idea there. Okay, very cool. It worked. But let's do a little bit of customization, some very simple customization here to further customize our widget. And I also want to show you exactly how this widget is functioning. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll flip back over to my widget category, my admin console here. And then let's go ahead and pop open the text widget over inside the sidebar there. Another cartoon. Okay, great. I'll just scroll down here a little bit. All right, so here's what we have. We have something called a div. I don't know if you have a familiarity with what a div is, but anyway, there's a div in there, which is essentially wrapping around the entire sort of block of code that we have here. And then what we have is a href. So we have a hyperlink. So what I did here is I created a mail to link to my email address here. You can change that if you want. You can change that to your email address if you like. And then what I did is I dropped in an image, img source equals, and then this image is sitting on one of my websites right now, jeff-blake.com /head1.jpg. And hopefully, if you're trying this out on your own, hopefully I haven't gone and deleted that graphic by accident. But anyway, this is a live graphic that's live on the web anyway. And then what I did is I threw in a title there as well, send an email. So when you move your mouse over top of that graphic, a little tooltip will appear there, send an email, and then if you click, you can actually send an email to whatever email address you specify here, right? And then of course below that, we just have a paragraph, and you can of course go and change that text as well. So that's the structure of this custom widget. The only other customization I want to do here is I want to set it up so that everything's center aligned inside the sidebar. If I go and flip back to the live blog for a second, you can see that everything's kind of shoved over to the left here. So we want to make sure that everything's nice and centered inside the sidebar. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to head to that open div tag, and I'll click just after div. I'll type in a space, align equals, open quote, center, close quote. That's it. Okay, let's save this guy up and head back to our live blog and refresh. Okay, great. Everything's happening here. There's our centered graphic there. If you hover your mouse over top, there's our tooltip, our title that's coming through there. And of course, because the text sits inside the div as well as the graphic, everything center aligns there. That's how it works. So again, you can do some really cool customization, and this is kind of a very rudimentary example of creating a customized widget here for your blog, but really your imagination and your creativity are really the only limits here.